Ladies and gentlemen, we are just going to very quickly rearrange the stage. While I do that, let me just come down to the front to remind you of a few other things that we have going on for you. We have in just a moment our ministerial keynote and our panel on the Nordics. Very much looking forward to that one. Incidentally, while you are walking around and listening to everything going on in this room, but then walking around outside, do take a look at your app, because it does have the full schedule in there. And if you work your way through, you can actually pinpoint the schedules that you would like to come and enjoy, and then it will put them into a personalized schedule for you. There are also all the photographs from the event. So if you've been speaking on this stage, or indeed one of your colleagues has been, and you would like to post it on social media, we have all our professional photographs ready for you to download. So more or less, as soon as a session has finished, more or less the photographs will be ready. So if you go into the app, two ways of finding the photos. You can scroll all the way down and you will see a tab with photographs, or on the main page, she says, trying to remember, down the bottom, if you look on the right-hand side where the 3 lines are down at the bottom, click into that and we will have the photographs on there as well. You scroll up and it says session photographs. You can download them all there, and it downloads to either your device or to a Google Drive, and then you can use them on social media. It's also a way of getting in touch with everyone as well, and making sure that you make the right connections and the right contacts while you are here. Something else just to point out, do make sure that you call into the Innovation Zone. The Innovation Zone is where we'll be having Speakers Corner. Some of the networking is going on in Hydeal as well. So all of that is happening. So delegates, what we have done here at World Hydrogen Week is try and ensure that there are as many opportunities as possible to not only hear everything that is going on within the industry, but also to connect with the people that you really want to have those conversations with. So I'm very pleased to say that we are now ready to move on with our schedule this afternoon. And we are absolutely delighted to welcome a very special guest to World Hydrogen Week. Thrilled that he has taken time out of his schedule to join us here today. And it is a great pleasure to welcome on stage from the Government of Denmark, the Minister for Climate, Energy and Utilities. Delegates, please welcome Lars Aagaard.
Thank you very much for that. And the pronunciation of my surname was better than average, so great. I didn't know that you were using audience votes, so I'm looking forward to what you should vote about. Unfortunately, I will not be here to hear the result because my calendar is extremely tight, so I will do my little speech and then, sorry, I need to run away very rapidly. Personally, I hate that. Humans are created so that we have 1 mouth and 2 ears, and I like to use those 2 ears to get a perspective on the political job I have. And I always welcome input from the industrial side, because what we are about to make is a change in industrial scale of our society, in how we produce and consume energy. So, dear participants, a warm welcome to Copenhagen, and a thank you to the organizers, partners of the event. I'm very proud that you chose to be here in Copenhagen. I think we all share a vision of a future where fossil fuels will be replaced by renewables, where hydrogen is utilized to its full potential, and that is truly a mighty potential. A future where hard-to-abate sectors will get out of fossil fuels, and we don't call them impossible to abate, but hard-to-abate sectors. So, of course, there is a way to do that. And hydrogen is in the center of that transformation. So in other occasions, I've used the picture that I guess most of you have been to Florence and know how the cathedral looked like. And in the top of the cathedral, there is an end stone. the end stone is what will make sure that the cathedral will stand by its own weight. For me, hydrogen is sort of the end stone in the green transition, because by that we can balance enormous amount of green electrons with the demand side, and we can store and so on and give some flexibility back to the system. So from a technical point of view, it's just fantastic, and I think we all share that vision. But it must always be, I mean, a vision is very nice, but it must also be grounded in realities. Otherwise, it's not a vision, it's just a dream. And dreaming doesn't really create markets for renewable hydrogen, so concrete action is needed in the real world. And at the same time, we must face the facts, and the facts are that we are struggling. You know, I've been in the energy business for more than 15 years. I was among the people who advocated that hydrogen would come very fast and to a low cost. I still believe that, but we all know that the expectations we had on how fast and how cheap it could become might not live up to our expectations. So yes, there are thousands of important pilot projects out there pushing for development. A lot of demand is waiting to be unlocked, but we're not really yet reaching the scale we need to see the industrialization of this industry, so costs can come down. Less optimism about hard-pressed timelines and large-scale projects materializing slowlier than we thought. That's just a reality that are facing us all. But at the same time, good things are also happening. From the public side, of course, public funding can take us some of the way, but it will never be enough. And if we don't manage to open up new finance streams, all our efforts will then be in vain. So we need a public-private partnership to get the capital flowing, and risks are here, and we need to share them. A lot of the challenges we are facing stem from interdependency. Interdependency remains a key factor in the economics of hydrogen projects. As an example, we recently launched offshore wind tenders for 6 gigawatts here in Denmark. And what I keep hearing from the offshore actors is the question, will there be an offtake for that industry? So there is an interdependency between the speed, the space we can open up for large-scale renewables. So a lot of that, we all know, low price on electricity, better business case for hydrogen, and where will the balance point be? Of course, this is an opportunity for the hydrogen market to play in this new electricity system. It can provide flexibility to renewable energy production and be a driver for new capacity. Even though I think Denmark is a great country, it's also a very small country. And we are in that specific and special situation that we can host a renewable production that far exceeds whatever there can be consumed in Denmark. And the same goes for hydrogen production. There is a potential to produce hydrogen here that far exceeds the Danish consumption. So part of the interdependency here is that we need cooperation between nations. Therefore, as part of the Danish co-presidency of the North Sea Energy Cooperation in 2024, hydrogen has been a top priority for us. So this historical cooperation between the North Sea's countries has focused on accelerating the renewable production. Now we are working to get hydrogen into the core of that cooperation as well. We will meet here, ministers, in 20 days from now in Denmark to have the yearly top-level meeting for ministers in the North Sea corporations. And my ambition is that we will establish a permanent working group on hydrogen. So hydrogen and renewable development will be very, very closely linked in the strategic thinking and also when it comes to how we should develop infrastructure and so on. Hydrogen, in other words, should have a seat at the table, and because it is part of the solutions that we need. Of course, it's also important that we have continuously will to support hydrogen and go into a risk-sharing agreement with the industry. In Denmark, we have solid demand in Germany and the Netherlands. So therefore, when I became a minister, one of the first things we did was to reach out to my German colleague and sign an agreement on how we could develop infrastructure between our two countries. So you need to get yourself engaged in a government-to-government cooperation at multiple levels to make it a success. Opportunities are there, and I'm looking forward to see where the money will go. With the, as I understand it, termination of the cooperation between Norway and Germany, Equinor has stated that they don't expect that there will be built an infrastructure for blue hydrogen. I think Denmark has then a very promising location to be a place where the demands in the German and Dutch industry, they must have the green hydrogen from somewhere, and Denmark is very good located to that. So I hope that there is an interest in developing that industry in our country. I've been in the energy sector, as I mentioned before, for more than 15 years. I was there when coal was the shit. I was there when the industry decided that the time was up to change. I have seen how rapid a huge industry can change from directing investments into the old assets into new. A tremendous change when the industrial will is there to use your capital and your competences to build a new industry. So it can't go fast, but we all here are working within the energy field, and we know that fast means not tomorrow. It means a transformation that will take several years. And so it takes a continuously pressure, cooperation, to meet the long-term ambition of creating a situation where we will have a world that will run entirely on green energy. And unfortunately, I have a plane to catch to Brazil, where we will, at G20, will also discuss how we can expand renewables and hydrogen in other places in the world. So I must be excused, and I need to run. But it was a pleasure being here, and thank you for listening. I hope you have a great stay here in Copenhagen and a fruitful conference. Thank you very much.
Minister Aagaard, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you. And really good to hear you say about the necessity to share risks and get the public and private money flowing. And very much him saying that the opportunities are there. So what we're going to do now is discuss and just see what is ahead if you want to capitalize on the North Seas and the Nordic pivotal role in the whole of the hydrogen economy. So delighted to welcome Johanna Holstrom back on stage to introduce her panel and to take us through this next section. Johanna, thank you. Lovely, thank you.
Great. We are so looking forward to discussing about how we can capitalize on our North Seas and the Nordic pivotal role in this space that we are investing in. We want to welcome, Eric Andersen at European Energy. Sorry, my names are Morten Bo Christensen at Mærsk and Mika Tainen at Technip. I'm so sorry. Let's start this session about seeing where in the space you are investing in, working in. Can we start with you, Mika?
Sure, thank you. And of course, it was interesting, first of all, to hear the Dragon's Den. I mean, I'm a serial entrepreneur from a background, so...
Who would you vote it on?
We take that afterwards.
Yeah,
okay.
Thank you.
So I'm Mika Tianara of Technip Energies, leading our commercial activities for the Nordics on decarbonization solutions. Technip Energies have a, let's say, long history in hydrogen. I mean, we've been working more than 60 years with hydrogen projects. So more than a third of the world's production comes from Technip Energies provided solutions. We have morphed into this, let's say, the whole energy transition now that over the past 3 years, and we have an umbrella, the Capture Now, where we as a leading global engineering and technology company delivering projects, the EPC side of this, blending in technology to that. We start from, let's say, like the minister talked about, I mean, low carbon gas and the blue hydrogen. We go over to also the carbon capture, and we have also the green part here with green H2, any derivatives of that. So we always look at the industrial scale as such. So that's where we're invested, and we're supporting a lot of, let's say, the Nordic project developers. And we want to go at scale and show that. But we will come back to that afterwards.
We will indeed. Morten?
Yeah, so I represent A.P Moller Mærsk, and we are a logistics company. We move somewhere between 13 and 14 million containers around the world every year. So we consume a lot of energy in doing so. Most of that today is fossil fuels. So where are we in the hydrogen value chain? Well, we are in the receiving end. We need a lot of green electrons and molecules to do the energy transition away from fossil fuels to the fuels of the future. So, and that comes in many different vectors. I'm sure Erik can talk about one of them, which is the fuel that will come out of southern Jutland around Christmas. I think Erik has promised us a Christmas present. So we are in the receiving end, and we have a huge consumption of energy. Actually, our company consumes close to the entire world's production of oil in one day that we consume in a year. So it is large scale, but I sit at the receiving end of this.
Erik?
Yeah, and my name is Erik Andersen. I'm the CEO of European Energy, and we are a renewable developer, meaning that we have a pipeline of 60 gigawatts of wind and solar projects across the globe in 25 countries. And besides that, we also do methanol and hydrogen. And if you just take the methanol part, I mean, we are in the commission phase now of what we think is the maybe world largest e-methanol production plant in Jutland here in Denmark, where we have a 300 megawatt PV facility, I think the largest in Northern Europe, delivering electrons into our e-methanol facility, where we will produce 40,000 tons a year. Yeah, as I said, or Morten said, we hope we can deliver the first ton of methanol, e-methanol to Laura Mærsk, which was name given last year, I think, around the same time. And so we have, as a basis for our 300 million euro investment, we have 4 offtake contracts, one with Mærsk, one with Lego for making small bricks for toys, and one with Novo, the pharmaceutical company, and then with Circle K, also for the transport sector. So we are in the e-fuel space as well as the. So we're both making molecules and electrons.
Maybe if I can just add a bit of size to this. So as Erik says, so the plant in Kassø is the world's largest. I think it is the world's largest. It produces these 40,000 tons. 40,000 tons, that is what one large container ship needs to sail. So
there's a long way to go.
There's some way to go. So the largest facility in the world can fuel one ship. This one will fuel, with some of the fuels, a small ship that will be sailing here in the Danish waters. But it's just to say that the scale that we need here is actually almost mind-boggling.
Great to hear, and great collaborations. Absolutely. What do you see are the biggest challenges that we are facing in the space of investability and hydrogen or renewable energy, for example? Where are we on that, out of your perspectives? Do you want to start?
Shall I start? Oh, okay. I mean, we see, of course, a lot of challenges. One being that to build the facility that we are now taking into operation, we needed 29 individual permits, either at the municipality level or at the state level. So that was 1 year work to get all these permits. Then, so that's number one. Then I think in general, in Europe, we need infrastructure, both to transmit all the electrons from where we produce green electrons so we can utilize them for green molecules, and that infrastructure has to be built out. And then, of course, the hydrogen backbone, which is now underway in Germany and Holland, etc., also need to be accelerated. Also in Denmark, the minister said nothing about it, but we need also a hydrogen infrastructure here in Denmark to facilitate, let's say, production. We are right now producing hydrogen and transport this hydrogen in trucks, which is it's not the ideal way of doing it. A pipeline is much more efficient, as everyone knows.
And you can actually fill them up in Sweden, as we are building out the infrastructure for the filling stations at the moment. Morten.
Yeah, so I think from my perspective, looking at this a little bit more from the outside, I think from a technology perspective, from a developer perspective, as you say, there's a ton of challenges, but that's what you're good at. That is to solve those challenges. So the way I see it, we have the technology, we have the capabilities, we have courage with companies such as European Energy. What I think the big unlock is demand. I think we see many great projects around the world. Everything is ready, and if you don't have, this is an immature market, there's no spot market for this. So if you don't have a long-term offtake agreement with a company that has a pretty big balance sheet, you're not going to get any cheap debt, and without that, you're not going to FID any projects. So in a way, I really see that the demand is the big problem. And why is that? Well, that's of course because that the green molecules are more expensive than the fossil alternative. And signing up for something for, let's say, 10 years or whatever, for something where you know your cost is going to be higher and you have no certainty that anyone wants to pay for it, I think that's holding back a lot of companies in transitioning this. So I think what we really need here is some regulatory support that can kind of level the financial playing field, because I think if demand is there, honestly, I think you're going to figure out the rest.
Mm.
Yeah, Eric, did you want to say something?
Okay, I tap into, good points there also, and I think the investability is very critical. Of course, how we look at this also, if you, for instance, some examples here with the blue H2, the blue hydrogen side, we look at, let's say, tapping into, let's say, our expertise and track record, combining, let's say, proven technology into a new flow scheme. So you can actually de-risk projects. That is key for us. Both de-risk the technology and the project delivery as such. Another example is, of course, in the green space. Like we spun out our green activities at Green H2 and Power-to-X solutions into Rely November last year. And we looked into, let's say, how can we make, from our aspects, the projects investable? And also creating, let's say, this standardized, modularized 100 megawatt hydrogen plant. That's one of the products as such. And we meet a lot of project developers in the whole of Nordics, both here and, during last week I've been touring in Oslo, Stockholm, Helsinki, now in Copenhagen. So of course, I think also what we see is that why do the project developers come to the Nordics? Not just from the countries itself, but also from abroad, because part of the Nordics, you also have rather affordable electricity, which is key for the hydrogen production as such. So I think we scrutinize every project in terms of, let's say, is this really something to bet on? Is there industrial scale there? Is there an offtake agreement? What about the regulations, etc.? So the maturity levels. It might also be that it's very early phase, so we can go in with our advisory arm, actually, to assist in developing the project in that phase. But I think electricity prices are key, and Denmark, of course, developing more on the offshore wind, etc. We can also assist there in terms of our offshore floating wind solutions from Equinor. So we are kind of in the whole, let's say, range of energy transition solutions.
We are indeed. And what do we say about what we need in terms of capital? We have, as you say, and everyone we know about it, we have a lot of startups or new technology that are now coming into realization in the value chain of hydrogen, for example, with electrolyzers or it's fuel cells or if it's stacks. We need to realize those investments. How are we finding that capital? Who would like to start on that?
Yeah, I mean, if you take our example, I mean, we have spent in the neighborhood of 300 million euros, both on the generator, the 300 megawatt solar facility, and then the e-methanol plant, which encapsulates around 52 megawatt of electrolyzers. That has been financed through some equity, of course, from our side, but also from normal bank financing so far. So we don't have any EU support, we don't have any Danish subsidies or anything. It's a pure market-based project.
Excellent. So hard capital. Morten, thank you.
Yeah, and I think that's I think it's very impressive what you have done in European energy. I do think, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I really think it boils down to if the demand is there, then you can finance your projects, because that is how you got your projects financed. You managed to find some customers. And we're up against the alternative again. I mean, the business model of an oil major is to do exploration and so on the balance sheet, and then you basically you take that risk, and that's basically your business model. You then sell it in a spot market, but that's not how it works with developers, because you simply don't have the balance sheet to do things like that. So you're simply not going to get any debt into your project if you don't have an off-taker, and you need one which is relatively solid. So I really think it somehow boils down to the demand. And the challenge is that we don't have any sort of demand aggregators at this point in time. So you basically have to go and chase every single customer. And of course, that can get you started, and you have started, but for this to really scale at the level and for much, let's say, less courageous companies than yours, we simply need some kind of certainty that there is an investable future for the projects. And that's really where demand kicks in. And the problem with hydrogen, certainly at the current stage, is that it is just, from a cost perspective, much more expensive. And hopefully one day we will reach cost parity, but as opposed to, for example, anything battery electric, I mean, we can see cost parity. It's here for really many use cases. That's not the case for hydrogen and the derivatives. So we probably have, whether it's 10 years or 15 years, we can debate that, but we need a hump to get over. And again, don't want to sound like a broken record, but I really think that the market cannot do that entirely by itself. We do need a regulatory framework that can facilitate that, both in aviation, and in shipping, and in some of these other industries that are reliant on green hydrogen.
Yeah, I mean, sorry.
No, offtake is key as such, and of course, you know, also the project developers as such need to have that, let's say, long-term stability. So you, for instance, Morten, as an offtaker, also know that, okay, this is feasible for you, but I think also like the bureaucrats, the regulators need to step up the game, and maybe contracts of difference are something to use also. I think also from our aspect is that, I mean, we try to really do our effort to, let's say, ensure the project developers, let's say, get the best possible solution from our side, whether we choose the technology or they want to choose the technology. But that's why I think that, let's say, some key projects both in Denmark and other countries in the Nordics reaching an FID in the, let's say, next 9 months or so, which are on let's say, already on a larger scale as such. I think we are doing progress in the market itself. In terms of, let's say, how to get investments in general, also, if you talk about technology, we look at models also, of course, to, let's say, can we invest in startups or scale-ups in a sense that we can plug them into, let's say, our solutions and go industrial scale quicker and give better total performance or reduce cost, etc. Because these business cases, I mean, for project developers are, you know, it's very thin margins. So we need really support from our governments and EU as such. And I think touring also the Nordics, you know, we hear the minister here, but also I think all the Nordic countries are kind of ready to, let's say, let's also see how we can coordinate and cooperate and go to EU as a, let's say, Nordic change agent to make this happen.
Eric,
Yeah,
please.
I mean, I fully agree. We need a little bit of time. I mean, in our business as a renewable developer, I mean, we started out with solar in Spain in 2008, and that was also crazy expensive. And now I think solar is the cheapest generator on a global perspective in most countries. So we need to find, let's say, someone who will bridge that gap in time, because we will probably need 5-10 years before you are happy with the prices that we can deliver methanol to. And that it can only, in my view, be the politicians or the regulator who can help us with making that bridge.
If I can just make a comment to that, I think what is quite encouraging is that if, for example, here in the EU, we now have the so-called ETS system, where you need to buy allowances to emit CO2. In shipping, there's also something called Fuel Zero Maritime, which is basically a technical fuel standard that you have to follow. And what we can see is that stuff works. So by sort of the mid-late 30s, no one who has any financial responsibility would want to burn fossil fuels on ships in Europe, because it's simply just far too expensive. So these things work, and they drive demand. It just moves a bit too slow, you can argue, and it needs to be on a global scale, because obviously it's a global problem that we have. But I think the good news is that we know about the frameworks that can work. It's just about basically getting them implemented, and I think Europe is actually showing the way. We always beat up on the politicians, but I think they actually do some really good things also, and I think this is one good example.
Great insights from you all. If we're talking about them, we're talking about Europe and the Nordics. Obviously, we have great technology, and we are collaborating a lot together. If we compare ourselves to, for example, the US, who are going a little bit further with their Inflation Act, for example, how can we compare us in Europe to that? And is there anything that we can learn, perhaps, and bring home? Who would like to start?
Maybe I'm going to be a bit tough here in a sense, because, you know, first of all, it's tapping into a bit what the minister talked about. But, you know, all the, let's say, Nordic countries, we look at also building the infrastructure, not just Denmark, but for the hydrogen pipelines. It will take time. And what we saw was that, let's say, what was mentioned, Norwegian pipeline to Germany now postponed. And of course, we're, if I'm a bit harsh, I'm saying no to 10 gigawatts in that sense. But I think it just shows that all the regulations and funding is not properly there, in a sense, from EU aspects to support that. So there needs to be more elements to show that, let's say, long-term stability in terms and with regulation, so that Mærsk and others can also tap into this potential, I would say.
Thank you.
I think everyone is, of course, attracted by the US and the IRA and all that. We look a little bit more broad. I mean, there are also some good support regimes in some European countries, so we are looking at that as well. And Australia could also be a good candidate, especially for methanol production. So we're looking globally and where to position our next facility. Yeah, it will be also about support, of course.
Yeah, I think so. As I mentioned, I think the EU is doing a really good job in stimulating the demand through this regulation. But at least to me, it seems like we could do more in Europe to actually also incentivize production in Europe. You mentioned the Inflation Reduction Act in the US, which are massive tax credits, bankable tax credits. It attracts a lot of investments, both in green fuels, battery production, and whatnot. We are seeing Canada having something quite similar. Australia is I think, in the process of doing something similar. If you look at China, it's very, very high on the political agenda, cheap money and lots of support to get things done. So there seems to be much more of an aggressive push to attract investments and get production in the region. I think that's where perhaps Europe could do more. I think you know that better, Erik, but it is relatively limited what you can get from subsidies or other benefits when you produce in Europe. And as a European, I really think it is a challenge, because at the end of the day, it's also about safety of supply and security of supply and so on. So I think that's where the EU could do more, now that we have a system that actually stimulates demand.
Absolutely. There are actually a few questions from the audience that we would like to get through as well, so we don't forget you guys. To you, Morten, you talk about offtake. What are the top 3 requirements for you to sign offtake deals?
Yeah, I think now Erik is smiling. So I think we have to be mindful that, I mean, there are some qualifiers, right? The product needs to be right. It needs to be certifiable, it needs to be RED II compliant, it needs to live up to the standards that we have. So it is not greenwashing or whatever. So I think that's a very fundamental thing that we will require. But I think then the price is absolutely critical, because right now we are relying on customers to voluntarily pay a green premium to fund the added cost. So price is absolutely critical. And then thirdly, of course, the capabilities it needs to be a reputable, decent, good partner we want to do business with if we are to commit. So I would say those things. And I'm sure if you ask Erik, he would say that our top 3 requirements are price, and then price. But I would like to nuance that with the ones I mentioned.
Erik, would you like to comment on that?
No, I think, as maybe also one of the other questions popped up about the first mover and all that, and it's clear that there may be some enthusiasm when you're the first and delivering and all that, and you're maybe willing to pay a small premium for that, being the first and all that. But very, very quickly, it turns into a normal business where you need to deliver the right quality, as I said, following all the qualification of the products and all that, and then, of course, to the right price. And we are on that path. I mean, if you look at our next generation compared to the first one that we are taking into operation now, I mean, we have made so many changes that it's difficult to actually to believe how many changes we have made to the next generation, simply to cost out and get hopefully a 20-30% cost reduction on the goods that we will deliver. Hopefully also to Morten, because we can see that, okay, you can shine maybe a year, maybe 2 on being first mover, but very, very soon you go back to the real life where you have to deliver at a competitive price. So that will always be the game in all markets.
We talk about price and first movers. Of course, if you're a project developer, I mean, being a bit on their side then, of course, with, let's say, how we support them with how to have, let's say, proper, let's say, capex estimation on plants, etc., de-risk the projects. But of course, any project developer, I mean, coming to you, Mærsk, or other companies, of course, they say that, okay, we need 15 years in terms of the agreement length, just to ensure that we can, let's say, go forward and make this investable. So I think that's also a key in, let's say, getting there. And of course, all Nordic countries, we look at the German market. You know, whether you're transporting that by pipelines eventually, but it's going to be shipping also. But of course, the German market is a bit soft on the offtake side. And that's what we have to, let's say, boost through EU. I mean, they're doing a tremendous work, but we have to gear up and get going, because it's about this energy security and having, let's say, jobs, etc., in Europe in the future.
But maybe just to build on Erik's comment also, I think it's also important to try to decompose a bit what is the first mover advantage. Because if you were Amazon or if you were Tesla, then the first mover advantage was that you were allowed to lose money for many, many years and still attract investors that believed in you and the future potential of your company, right? I don't think many developers can afford to lose a lot of money for many years. So that kind of first mover advantage just doesn't exist in the energy space. And that's why I actually think there's a lot of companies who sit and wonder, is it really a first mover's disadvantage, because you do definitely learn a lot, but on the other hand, you also get some of the first electrolyzers that are less efficient than the next generation and so on. So I think this thing about, but you're a first mover, so everything will be fine. I really think it takes a lot of courage to be a first mover in this space. I'm sure at the end of the day you will benefit, but it's not. This is not Tesla, and this is not Amazon. It's not that kind of first mover advantage that we see.
Excellent. Eric, you were about to say something.
I fully agree. I mean, with Morten. I mean, but I mean, we're still. I mean, yeah. We should not talk about electrolyzers and how mature that industry is. That will not be the subject, because then we can talk for a long time, I think. But I'll just say that the learnings we have from the first design is for us quite valuable. So I think it's a balance.
Wonderful. What do you say, Mika?
Well, I mean, it got into a bit on the electrolyzers. I mean, I kind of feel like, you know, we work with a lot of them. I mean, we can do technology agnostic assessments, but of course, for us, it's also to, let's say, ensure that we work with reliable partners in that sense. We have built a constellation through our Rely Clear 100 Plus with one electrolyzer OEM, but of course having the stack manufacturing in France, a gigafactory. So it's not just about, let's say, where we produce the energy, but the whole manufacturing, the fabrication chain. That's also, let's say, we try to secure or have it, let's say, competitive in Europe.
Quite agree, all of us, I think. We are about to run out of time. So I think we will want to know perhaps 3 key takeouts from the panel and these couple of days that we have been in Copenhagen, and the investability and the future forward for hydrogen. Could you do that for us? Who would like to start?
I can be quick, because I think the energy transition, you know, it's a collaborative transformation, and we have to be competitive in every step of the value chain, and we are part of the solution as such with Technip Energies and our group of companies.
Morten?
Yeah, so I would say maybe not just specifically from these days, but I think in general over the last couple of years, I would say that, and I thought there was also a comment around some of the failed projects that we have seen recently. I think there's much less hype around this topic than there was a couple of years ago. The headlines and all the presentations about this fantastic thing. So a lot of that is gone. But I do think there's a lot of serious work going on, real work in the real world, producing real assets that can produce real electrons and molecules. And I think that we should focus on a lot more than all these stories about this project and that project going belly up, because that's how transformation is, right? Some make it, some don't. I think we should focus on those who make it, because that has changed over the last couple of years. Now we produce stuff. 2 years ago we talked about it.
Exactly. Everything is a learning curve, at least for us. So yeah, we fully agree.
Wonderful. I think we will leave it there and say that we need to do our 3 C's: collaboration, consolidation, equals capital. And what we talked about earlier, hard capital, because we know there's a lot of soft funding, but I think we need to find that hard capital as well. Thank you so much to the panel. And I think everyone is dying for some lunch. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah, really, really interesting to hear your views, especially after we'd heard from the minister. So thank you very much. Yes, delegates, it's time for a lunch break. We have another full program for you after lunch, obviously with the streams carrying on. Right now, we have, or in the next couple of minutes in Speaker's Corner, we have an opportunity to chat to 2 people within the industry about their views and their opinions on it. Speaker's Corner is over in the Innovation Zone. We'll hear from Enigas, Renovable and Equinor as well. And we can just have a chat with them in a more casual environment. Everything starts back here after the stream, so enjoy lunch, enjoy this afternoon, and we'll see you back later. Thank you.
Yeah. Let's go.